internationally acclaimed baritone, Sean Anderson. Sean has performed extensively in North America, in Italy, and Japan. And some of the notable performances in North America are San Francisco Opera, Sarasota Opera, Santa Fe Opera, and he was a principal in Baz Luhrmann's La Boheme in Los Angeles. Sean and I met during my first week at CCM, became fast friends, and have been friends ever since. So please welcome Sean Anderson.
Thank you, you've all been wonderful. We are a little informal today. My wife would appreciate it if I told you that these, while not my slacks, are in fact brand new jeans that were lovingly infused with wood smoke last night, as one does when one visits with their best friend, which did absolutely nothing for my allergies or whatever is going on right here. So you're likely to hear some little bloops and pops, and I beg your finest pardon, but the show must go on, as it were. Rudyard Kipling is, or was, a poet and writer that was born in the latter half of the 18th century and lived to see the end of World War II. I really enjoyed his writings, especially when I was younger. He's most famous, of course, for writing The Jungle Book and Gunga Din. And I think the reason why I liked his poetry so much is that it's quite accessible, even if it was written decades and decades before I was born. It has a very simple rhythmic beat usually, always rhymes, and you can usually get the subject matter very quickly. One listening or one reading, you'll understand exactly what you're supposed to be feeling. Unfortunately, or fortunately for however you want to look at it, he was very much a product of his time. He was from Great Britain, and that, of course, was really kind of coming to the, not quite the apex, but certainly still near the top of when Britain had an empire. And his views on everything are extremely colored by the fact that that's when he lived. He's written some other poetry that's very popular with a certain demographic. I won't go into details, but one of the poems is called The White Man's Burden. And I don't believe that's ever been set to music, shockingly. But it's important. And when I found that out about him, when I actually started to look into him more as I got older, I was very disappointed because I enjoyed so many of his poems when I was younger. But it is important, I think, to remember that any art that you are experiencing from the past does reflect the tenor of that time. And it's also interesting to think to the future and what people thinking and writing about what we consider to be good and correct and proper behavior, what that will change, what strange ways they will think about the strange views that we had during our time when we thought we were all so correct. I don't know, it's just, it appeals to me. This collection of songs is mostly lighthearted, or at least fun to perform. And we'll talk more about the other songs later. As I said, we're very informal. Feel free to applaud in between the songs if you feel so moved, or let it accumulate if you would prefer. But excuse the water as well. It's smart water. I'm hoping it will help the performance. At any rate, this is the first song. It is called Rolling Down to Rio. It's from a collection of poems that he wrote called just so stories. They're called just so stories because he thought of them and wrote them for his daughter, who insisted that they always be read just so. And so, here is Rolling Down to Rio. I've never seen the Amazon, nor I've never reached Brazil, but the Don and the Magdalena, they can go there when they will. Yes, weekly from Southampton, great steamers white and gold go rolling down to Rio, roll down to Rio. And I'd like to roll to Rio someday before I'm old, to roll. I'd like to roll to Rio someday before I'm old. I've never seen a jaguar, nor yet an armadillo, doing in his armor, and I suppose I never will. Unless I go to Rio, these wonders to behold. Oh, roll me down to Rio, roll really down to Rio, and I'd love to roll to Rio someday before I'm old. To roll, I'd love to roll to Rio someday before I'm old. Thank you very much. Kipling wrote prolifically, lots of collections of short stories and a few books, and he would always publish poems with his short story collections. This one is called A Smuggler's Song, and it was published with a story that had to do with this sort of business. If you wake at midnight and hear a horse's feet, don't go drawing back the blind or looking in the street. Then that asks no questions isn't told a lie. Watch the wall, my darling, when the gentlemen go by. 25 ponies trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk, laces for a lady, letters for a spy. So watch the wall, my darling, when the gentlemen go by. Knocks and footsteps around the house, whistles after dark. You've no cause for running out till the house dogs bark. Trustees here and pincers here, and see how dumb they lie. They've no cause to bother when the gentlemen go by. 25 ponies trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk. Them that ask the questions isn't told a lie. So watch the wall, my darling, when the gentlemen go by. Yes, watch the wall, my darling, when the gentlemen go by. perhaps. He was too old to participate much in World War I and World War II, but he was active during the Boer War, which was a very short-lived war in the British Empire where they fought several South African tribes. He was inspired to write, throughout the course of his life, several poems that became known collectively as the Barrack Room Ballads. Many of these have been set to music, and they were extremely popular during World War II. World War I as well, World War II especially, because it appealed to the soldier qualities and the somewhat snarky, malicious compliance nature of many of the lower ranks. But this next song is not really snarky, it is more somber. It's called Danny Deaver. Slack that whimpers overhead and files on parade. It's Danny's soul that's passing now, that files on parade. For they're done with Danny Diva, you can hear the quick step play. The regiments in column and they're marching us away. Oh, the young recruits are shaken, and they'll want their beer today, after hanging the Danny Diva in the morning. This will be the last of the Kipling songs, one of my favorites, also part of the Backroom Ballads. The song leaves out quite a few verses, which is a good thing, I think, because the British imperialism is on full display in the entire poem. But the parts that have been set to music by Damrosch are beautiful, I think. So, this is The Road to Mandalay. By the old Mulmain Pagoda, looking eastward to the sea, there's a permaculus setting, and I know she thinks of me. For the wind is in the palm trees, and the temple bells they say, come you back, you British soldier, come you back to Mandalay, come you back to Mandalay.
like thunder.
respect for all that music gives us in all its many forms. It will be subjective, of course, as to what types of music you consider your vegetables, what types of music you consider your heavy creams and delicately prepared meats and so on and so forth. I'm not going to tell you all mine. However, these last songs, I think we'll all be able to agree, are pretty much dessert. I love the opportunity to perform them. These are songs by a duo named Flanders and Swan. British, of course, but they did a circuit around Britain, around Australia, all over the world really, where just a pair of kooky British people who did funny songs. Some of them very bitingly satirical. But I've known them all my life and enjoy them very much. I often include one or two as encores when I do recital work, but I'm going to just do several of them right here for you. This first one is dedicated to anyone who's ever owned a hoe. It is called The Gas Man Cometh. Jeremy and Kelly, everyone, walking upstairs. Was on a Monday morning, the gas man came to call. I couldn't turn the tap on, I wasn't getting gas at all. He tore out all the skirting boards to try and find the main. So I had to get a carpenter to put them back again. Oh, it all makes work for the working man to do. It was on a Tuesday morning, the carpenter came round. He hammered and he chiseled, and he said, look what I found. Your joists are full of dry rot, but our super enter rights. And he nailed right through a table. And out went all the lights. Oh, it all makes work for the working man to do. On a Wednesday morning, the electrician came. He called me Mr. Sanderson, which isn't quite my name. He couldn't reach the fuse box without standing on a bin, and his foot went through a window, so I called the glazier in. Oh, it all makes work for the working man to do. It was on a Thursday morning, the glazier came along with his blowtorch and his putty and his merry glazier song. It was lovely, thank you for that. He put another peg in, it took no time at all, but I had to get the painter in to come paint the wall. Oh, it all makes work for the working man to do. It was on a Friday morning, the painter made a start. With undercoats and overcoats, he painted every part, every nook, and every cranny. But I found when he was gone, he painted over the gas tap, and I couldn't turn it on. Oh, it all makes work for the working man to do. On Saturday and Sunday, they do no work at all. So 'twas on a Monday morning that the gas man came to call. Flanders and Swan had a whole bunch of songs that they titled their animal songs. And they're all quite fun. This one is a cherished favorite, however. It's called The Gnu. Oh, a little fast, maybe. Thank you. A week ago, last Thursday, I was strolling at the zoo when I met a man who thought he knew the lot. He was laying down the law about the habits of And so I asked him, what's that creature there? He answered, it's an elk. I might have gone on thinking that was true. Had the animal in question not put that man to shame, and responded, I'm not an elk, I'm a gnu. I'm a gnu. I'm a gnu. The nicest work of nature in the zoo. I'm a gnu. How do you do? You really ought to know wahoo's wahoo. I'm a gnu, spelled G-N-U. I'm not a camel or a kangaroo. So let me introduce, I'm neither man gno, so gno, 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 I'm a gnu. I had taken furnished lodgings down in Recital-on-Sea, whence I travelled on to Ashton-under-Lyne, it was actually. And the second night I stayed there, I was wakened by a dream, which I will tell you all about some other time. Among the hunting trophies that were hanging on my bed, stuffed and mounted was a face I thought I knew. Was it a bison? Does it look like a bison? An okapi? Unlikely, really? Could it be a wildebeest? And then I seemed to hear a voice. I'm a gnu. I'm a gnu. A ganother gnu. I wish I could ganache my teeth at you. I'm a gnu. How do you do? You really ought to know wahoo's wahoo. I'm a gnu, spelled G-N-U. Call me bison or okapi, and I'll sue. Nor am I in the least like that dreadful wildebeest. Oh, gno, 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 I'm a gnu. Gno, 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 I'm a gnu. It's awfully nice of you, thank you. And now for the part of the show you've all been waiting for, the end. The final song that I shall sing will require audience participation, as I seem to understand there are several singers in the room. Please join in on the final chorus. I will sing it twice throughout the song, so you should have ample time to learn. There are many people who think the title to this next song is irrelevant. But it's not irrelevant, it's a hippopotamus. A bold hippopotamus was standing one day by the banks of the cool Shalimar. He gazed at the bottom as it peacefully lay by the light of the evening star. Away on a hilltop sat combing her hair his fair hippopotami maid. The hippopotamus was no ignoramus and sang her the sweet serenade. Mud, mud, glorious mud, nothing quite like it for cooling the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow, and there let us wallow in glorious mud. That was the chorus. This fair hippopotami he aimed to entice from a seat on that hilltop above. As she hadn't got a mark to give her advice, came tiptoeing down to her love. With thunder, the forest re-echoed the sound of the song they sang as they met. His inamorata adjusted her garter and lifted her voice in duet. Glorious blood, nothing quite like it for cooling the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow, and there let us wallow in glorious mud. Now more hippopotami began to convene by the banks of that river so wide. I wonder now, what am I to make of the scene that ensued at the Shadow side? They dove all at once with an ear-splitting splosh, and then rose to the surface again, a regular army of hippopotami, all singing this haunting refrain. Everybody mud, mud, glorious mud, nothing quite like it for cooling the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow, and there let us wallow in glorious mud.
So, we have some time left, and I would love to invite you guys for any questions you might have for Sean. I'll start. Why do you do this?
I ask myself that question often. When I was 17, it was a very good year. I went to the high school program that's run out of Tanglewood called BUTI, or Booty. And there, we did all kinds of intensive work. They were sort of giving us an idea of what being a voice major in college would be like. Much the same curriculum, tailored for high school students. But we would also get master classes, and they brought somebody in who I'd never heard of, and I haven't heard much of since, but he was apparently someone worthy of respect. And I'm always thinking, oh, I should look up who this person was, and I always forget. His name was Bill Crowfoot, and he was elderly, but he had had a career as a singer, and he did very similar to what I just did, fun stuff. At the end of it, somebody asked him a question similar to that. And he said, and this is going to be applied to all art, I think, that a career in the arts is no way to make a living, but it is a way to have a life. And so, I think that is why I do this. I was bitten by the bug at a very early age. My father was a performer, and I saw him perform when I was 7. I think that was the first time I really sort of latched on to the idea of what it was he did, and that somebody could do this and for the rest of your life. And so I wanted to be an entertainer, and I tried a bunch of different things, and eventually settled on singing. I had the physiology for it, too tall for the movies, not a good enough actor for Shakespeare. Once I grew 5 inches one summer, I was no longer a dancer. Voice and opera is what it became. But I've always thought of myself as an entertainer first. and a singer second, and it maybe has not done me many favors. Maybe it has, but I have to be true to myself, and that's the truth for me.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yes?
So I guess I have like two parts. One, I want to know how you pick like your rep and stuff, because like I hadn't heard of like many of these composers, and I thought this interesting. Two, I really liked your physicality and your character choices, and I want to know how you approach that from a holistic view. And like in my lessons, we talk about how technique, like once we have that acting down, like that pushes our technique to the next level.
Oh, yes.
So I wanted to know like what your process is.
So the first question was how I pick my rep.
Yes.
Well, I cheat. As I said, my father was a singer, and he assembled, over the course of his life, a massive library of songs. And they are all very well suited, both for a baritone voice and, in many ways, a baritone's persona, perhaps, if it's a persona you put on or just happen to have. So I always go to that library first. He's done all the work. But unfortunately, that means that I end up being rather more illiterate than I would care to be when it comes to newer works. And so I always have to force myself to sort of get back put myself back in the stream and say, what's going on? What are people performing these days? And as the years go by, what I consider modern music gets further and further behind until I say something like, well, I did some modern music, I did some Lee Hoyby, and they're like, modern music? That's decades old. What about the new stuff? So, also my wife is a librarian, and so I'm able to get music from all over the world through her, fortunately. But it's important, I think, in school, I always found that there was, at some points that I was given freedom to choose the rep that I wanted, but then there was times when I was clearly being forced to choose something else. Forced to choose. And inevitably, the things that I didn't care for very much, I didn't do as well. So the needs of the moment will probably dictate what you have to consider in terms of programming. If somebody wants a specific type of song, or there's a festival that you're doing that has a particular theme or something like that. But the most important thing, I think, is to do a song that you like, or to perform a poem that you have some kind of connection to, beyond just, oh, I've got to put something on the end here, or something like that. Because the audience will know, even if you sing it beautifully, if you do not perform it effectively, then it probably won't matter that much that you sang it beautifully, at least not to the majority of the audience, I have found. And then the second part of your question was physicality. A lot of that just comes through time and training. I was fortunate in my younger days and then through school to do a lot of performing. I was on stage all the time. And when I first started, I thought I was great. But then over the years, I learned that I wasn't, and then slowly built myself back up from that. Being able to dance, being able to act, being able to sing put me in a position to do a lot of operetta. And so I've done a lot of operetta, which bears with it certain comedic physicality, which works very well for comedy, but a lot of the principles and a lot of the timing and a lot of the gestures and things to do and not to do can be applied to all performance, not just comedy. And so I watched a lot of physical actors. I stood in the wings and watched people I thought were particularly good. I listened to directors who knew what they were talking about in terms of, it can't just be a cartoon. Make sure, for a variety of reasons, make sure that your movement is thought out and specified, because if you're just up there wailing around, it will affect your singing, it will affect your voice, it will affect your breath. But something that looks spontaneous is actually very specifically placed and planned so as to be done with the least amount of energy as possible, but to convey the most amount of meaning. It takes time, and it takes training, it takes instinct, and it takes experience. There are no secrets, I don't think. I think it's just something you have to get good at. Get good, as the kids say. Does that answer your question? Yes, wearing the mask.
What is the biggest piece of advice that you could give to like those of us who might want to pursue a career in like performance?
Learn to play the piano. Learn to play it well. It will make you, you're doing yourself a favor, first of all. Second of all, there are, in any given town, 12 to perhaps, if you're lucky, 30 music jobs going on at any given moment. More if it's a bigger town, less if it's a smaller town. Probably one of those is going to be for singing, maybe two. But the rest are probably going to be for a pianist, either as an accompanist, as a coach, as an organist, as a church accompanist. The things you will learn playing piano will help you understand how music is written and allow you to see depth into what a composer was doing that you never realized was there as a singer. But beyond that, most importantly, it's just so convenient to be able to get a call and say, hey, have you ever done this role? And to say, no, I haven't. Let me just sort of sit down, and you can listen to a recording, of course, but you really need to sit down at the piano and play through. So, of course, I know now that you just listen to somebody else playing the piano, but that's not going to do you any help if somebody actually needs a pianist. You can't just give them a recording and say, here's somebody else playing. Can I have money for that? That's a big one. I regret deeply not spending more time mastering the piano. So that's a big one. The second one, I think, is one that I know I've heard many times. And I know that it transcends not just music, it transcends all forms of art, because I've spoken to other artists, to actors, to draftsmen and women, to ballet dancers. At some point, somebody like me comes up and says, if you can be happy doing anything else, you should do that. Now, when I heard that when I was in college, I dismissed it. I took it to heart. I thought that the person meant well, but I didn't think of it. It's important to put that into context. I don't mean to scare anybody. If you've gotten this far, then this is going to be a part of your life forever, regardless of what you end up doing. And it makes you better in touch with your humanity, and you're going to be better human beings for it. But you might not be able to have as many children as you want. You might not ever be able to afford anything new. You might have to perform and genuinely be friendly to people who you absolutely loathe because of their political or cultural views. You will miss important events in your family's lives that other people will not be able to understand how you could possibly miss. And if you have a spouse that understands, that's amazing. But their understanding only goes so far. And at some point, there will be a decision that has to be made as to how your life is going to continue as an artist and with a family. If you choose art, you will lose your family. When I say art, when you choose to be solely a performer, I think you will lose your family, because I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. The artists who are the most successful being singers, being in any form of art, their music and their career is first in their lives, and everything else is a distant second. That's a very hard calculus to wrap your brain around, and not everybody can do it, and it bears consequences. I chose family, I chose life, and I'm very happy that I did. And as a result of my career, I've gotten to go do things, amazing things, and see amazing things, and experience amazing things. I don't regret 1 second of it. And if somebody calls me up, as they did just a couple weeks ago, and says, hey, we need you to come and do a count in Marriage of Figaro with very little notice, I can turn to my wife and say, hey, can I go do this? And she will say yes. But when that gig gets canceled a week later, and I tell her, it turns out I'm not actually going, the look in her eyes of relief was quite strong. So, again, I don't mean to scare anybody, but think very carefully. Piano, try and be happy. Those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice. Yes?
How do you make your money aside from that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. When the pandemic hit and every theater in the world closed, I found myself with lots of time on my hand, as did a lot of my actor and singer friends. I have a circle of friends that happens to be quite geeky. And while we lived in different cities, we thought this might be the opportunity to finally get together online and play a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Which we started to do. And we started to stream it. And people saw me dungeon mastering, and people wanted to pay me to run games for them. I run between 8 and 9 Dungeons and Dragons games a week now. I get paid by each person every time. And it's not a lot of money, but it allows me to scratch the performance itch. And I can often do it when I go away on a gig. And if I have to pause a game while I'm on a gig, happy to say everybody always comes back. We're going to be debuting our 2nd season of Severed Threads on Twitch on Saturday night, which is a game that's being sponsored by Storytellers Forge. They wrote a module, and I'm running the module for them. I have a podcast. It's called Echoes of Kryn, and I do conventions and stuff like that. And it's gotten to the point that it's work, but I have to say every time I sit down, I'm always excited to play. And I've got a great group of people from all over the world, from the UK, from both coasts of the US, from Australia. That poor guy has to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to play with us, can you believe it? But that's what I do. I'm a dungeon master. It's exactly what you're thinking. Yes?
This is related to Dungeons and Dragons.
Awesome, bring it.
But do you give like your NPCs and stuff funny voices?
Oh,
If so,
100%.
can you demo us your favorite one?
I'll try, as I said, a little compromise, but the first game that we streamed was based on a really horror-based game called Descent into Avernus. And in that very scary module, there is one NPC that is the bright, shining light of hope.
And her name is Lulu. Lulu is about this big. She's a golden hollyphant, which is a little flying elephant.
And my players wanted to kill me when I killed her off. But yes, a lot of the skills that I've learned through being a performer are, it's entertainment. You're entertaining, and that's what I do for the players, and that's, it's certainly enjoyed a big resurgence in the last one. Jeremy and I can't believe it. You know, when we were kids, if you played Dungeons and Dragons, you were exorcised from your community. But the popularity that it has now has given rise to professional DMs. A little controversial in some corners, but it takes a lot of time and I think a lot of talent in order to do it well, and it deserves compensation. And there you have it. Yes.
It's a two-part question. What does your practice time look like, and then how do you balance live music?
Well, my practice time is not what it used to be. Even with the Dungeons and Dragons, my games are all in the afternoon and evening, so I usually practice in the morning. But I'm at the age now where a lot of people in my generation are now having to deal with aging parents, which sucks, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's the worst. And so my wife and I and my daughter have moved in with my in-laws to help keep them at home for as long as possible. And as a result, my practice time has gone way down. And you know, my ability to take jobs has also gone way down. I'm not as able to just jump up and leave, despite what my wife says in terms of support. But it's very important. You whatever you have that helps you, be it an app on your phone, rigorous self-discipline, a routine that you do that gets you into the space, the physical space that you say, this is work, this is where I'm working. When I enter here, I'm now working. You know, some days it's just for an hour. Some days it's the entire morning. We have a friend named Andrew Garland who had the most amazing work ethic, and I was so envious of him. I don't know what he did or if it was just his nature, but it's very easy to be distracted, so you have to be draconic with yourself in terms of when you devote your time, and nothing can interrupt it. With exceptions, of course, but this is practice time. And yeah, just one of the things that your family really appreciates every morning at a certain time when you begin to scream for extended periods of time. Was that both parts of the question?
Sure.
It was? Yes?
Performing a lot is it's a lot for your voice. So what's your favorite vocal health tip, I guess, for performing?
Hydrate. Vocal health tip. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this from your teachers, but since singing is so reliant on your body, anything you do that makes your body healthier will inevitably make your singing better. With exceptions of, things that you might eat that disagree with you or something like that. Avoid things that give you reflux. And that's not a blanket statement for everybody. Everybody has different things that give them reflux, but you know what not to do. Don't drink a lot. What did we do last night, Jeremy? Yeah. Don't smoke a lot. What did we do last night, Jeremy? Nothing, yeah. Do as I say, not as I do. The damning thing about it is that there are no nerve endings on your vocal folds, actually. So if you are sick, you have no way of knowing if that is swollen, other than just testing a little bit here. And if my vocal folds are swollen, I cannot sing falsetto, period. So that's usually what I will do. If I'm feeling poorly, I will say, well, is this serious? La, 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 la. Not serious. If I go, it's serious. Never, ever sing if you have anything impeding the flow of your breath. Because if you push against that, very bad things happen very quickly. My father, an opera singer, at his prime, went and did a gig in Korea, came back and was teaching a class with a sore throat. which he attributed to just jet lag. And he wasn't even singing. He was trying to get the attention of a room, just speaking loud, and he hemorrhaged a vocal fold, and his voice was never the same. So, take your bodily health seriously. Exercise, don't over-exercise your core. You want to be sleek, like a cat. Some cats. You don't want to have just a washboard. I mean, I know some singers who do that sound great, but I think it would sound better if they had more supple strength as opposed to rigid strength. Yes?
How would you recommend some performers increase their stage presence?
Training. Watch videos of old actors. I'm a huge fan of Shakespeare. There is a series, I think the entire series is on on YouTube, and it's from the BBC. It's a terrible recording. Somebody recorded it with a VCR off of a television. And the Royal Shakespeare Company goes through a whole series of lectures where they talk about how to perform Shakespeare. And it has Judi Dench, when she was young, Patrick Stewart, when she was young, Ian McKellen, when he was young. All actors that you've seen all over the place doing things. And of course, what they're talking about mostly is Shakespeare, but observing how they go in and out of character, what they do, how they stand, and how they trust that doing the work, doing the process, pays off. Nerves will go away. Your worry about what is happening or isn't happening here will go away, and you can start to concentrate on the physicality. And then if you're lucky enough to do a show that has a long run, or a recital series that has a long run, it's not until the 6th or 7th performance, or even further on, where the adrenaline really begins to give way to just doing the work. And then is when you can actually really start to hone. Not many singers get the opportunity to do that. I'm fortunate, I've worked a lot at Sarasota Opera. It's a repertory, so they always do multiple runs of their shows. I've only sung Papageno 3 times in my life, but at a total of, I think, maybe 20 performances, 13 of those performances were in Sarasota. And I got to know that role very well, and my 13th performance was very different from my first one. But this applies to singing, applies to everything. You want to find someone who speaks the same language as you in terms of creativity, because wasting your time on somebody who's not teaching you well is the worst thing you can do. You need to find somebody who is able to speak to you in a way that you actually learn, and do stuff and explain things in a way that you actually benefit from. And you get experience with that with apprentice programs and just on-stage directors and all that sort of thing, but it comes.